So to aid our review or our revision for our test on Friday, here are some discussion of the answers of the revision booklet. So training and physiological factors that affect performance. So the first question that we looked at was body composition, skeletal structure and physiological characteristics are factors that can affect the sporting performance of men and women differently. So the first concept was that you needed to know a difference in body composition and a difference in skeletal structure. So 1 mark each, easy marks. So I've looked here, body composition, men have greater muscle mass. So straight away, that's an easy one that you should always go to. That can also lead to men also have greater aerobic capacity, they have greater blood volume, they have greater cardiac size and strength. With the skeletal structure, women or men generally have larger and heavier bones. Women's pelvis is generally larger and shallower. Now with the second question, if you answered something about men having greater muscle mass, that would aid that then question here. So describe how one difference in physiological characteristics of men and women can affect their sporting performance. So with greater muscle mass, let's just say men can perform more powerful movements more regularly. All right, now we don't want to stop there. We want to then add a practical implication or a practical example. So it leads to increased speed, power, strength and agility. So you could say male versus female 100 metre sprint. The world record for men is 9.6. For women, it's just over 10 seconds. So we can see the obvious difference there. Now, question 12. In preparation for a 3-day endurance competition, athletes need to consider carefully their nutritional and hydration requirements. So looking at dietary intake. So state one change to dietary intake that would maximise performance. 1 in the week before competition for 1 mark. During the first day of competition for 1 mark. At the end of the first day of competition. So I've said week before competition, we're looking at more focused low GI carbohydrates, so slow release energy to build up a glycogen storage, so breads, pastas, rice, red sauce, not creamy white. During the first day of competition, you want more high GI foods, so quick release, easy to break down energy, so lollies, fruit, energy bars, energy drinks. So that's that fast release energy, and then at the end of the first day of competition, you want high GI foods again with fats and carbohydrates, protein-rich drinks, flavoured milk. High GI foods replace carbohydrates, loss, that's meant to be loss, and promote growth and repair. Explain how each dietary intake that you've stated in part A would maximise performance. So I've done that a bit there in that question, but let's look at, for 1, we store high levels of glycogen for more high-intensity efforts. So remembering the more glycogen we have, the more able we are to perform at a high intensity during that event and when we need to, even if it is aerobic. 2, during the first day of the competition, so enhance sprinting and jumping, enhance whole body motor skills, speed and agility, improve the mood in the later stage of exercise, so even as a brain fuel, helping our concentration, being able to make decisions about when we do our high intensity activity, etc. And 3, at the end of the first day of the competition, it's all about recovery. So allowing the body to recover at a faster rate, reduce the effect of fatigue on the next performance. If you had to perform the next day, that high GI food would then replace the glycogen storage in our muscles. Okay, question 17. So we're looking here at a 2-hour ball game in 4 30-minute quarters. So they're probably talking about AFL football, but they mention high intensity efforts and breaks and things like that. But they look at 4 training programs. So session H, M, K, and P. So using the data above, so there's lots of different things that separate the different sessions, like intensities, duration, type of activities, things like that, which should allow us to be able to separate them fairly easily. So using the data above, explain which training session H, K, M, or P emphasises the ATP energy system, CP. So I've said session H here. Session H has 95% intensity effort, so it's that high intensity effort. We also have working for 60 metres, so roughly 8 seconds, and then the recovery for is roughly 30 seconds. It's probably about 24, that 1 to 3 work rest. So we spend most of our time in our PC system. Even if we're going to get really picky about that, that is the most likely, or that is the most one that matches the ATP PC system. And it asks about the lactic acid system. So I've said session M because we have high intensity still. Then we're looking at this 300 meter runs. So just think about how long it takes you to run 300 meters. Push past that 10 seconds lactic acid threshold, probably 1 minute of high intensity work, and a 1 to 2 work rest ratio. It's not enough time to really remove all that lactic acid there. All right. So continuing on, because quite a long question, which is good. This is sort of questions we'll get in our exams. So using the data on the page opposite, state and explain which training session HK, M, or P is likely to improve anaerobic threshold. So let's have a look here. Now I'm thinking if we're working up towards our anaerobic threshold, let's call it lactic threshold. This is an old exam. We're looking at 75 to 85% of VO2 maximum. So 40-minute run, working between 75 to 85% of VO2 max, which is session P. This allows for cardiovascular chronic adaptations. So we're continually pushing that, and it means that we're increasing oxygen delivery, we're experiencing obla, or pushing that obla point, thus increasing that lactic threshold. Using data on the page, explain why specific energy systems should be trained for this game. So it's mentioned that over 120 minutes there are lots of short, high-intensity efforts. So session H and M have activities working between 75 and 95% of our maximum heart rate, between 60 and 300 meters. So they match the specifics of the game, those two sessions. The recovery aspect means that they have a good base aerobic fitness. So the more efficient recovery, the lower the percentage maximum heart rate would allow for the development of this. So if we're looking at why specific energy systems should be trained for the game, there's looking at those specific training sessions, and we're matching them with those energy systems. State and explain C. Which training session H, K, M or P would be held at the beginning of the training program? So I've said session K, pre-season, building base level aerobic fitness. Now people could argue that it would have been, let's have a look, it would have been P, but if you look at P, look at 75 to 85%. Now I'm thinking that could be a pre-season training session. However, at 65% to 75%, this allows for athletes that don't have a base level of fitness, meaning we couldn't push them like in session P. So that means that at the beginning of the training program, that would be a good entry point for all athletes. State one reason for the inclusion of flexibility exercise in the training program. Explain your answer. So 2 marks, I've said reduce the chance of injury. More flexibility means more range of movement for the muscles, which can handle the increased intensity in training. For those that are not flexible, as we increase the intensity of training, we would find that a range of movement restrictions could cause muscle tear or strain in particular areas. Question 11. Refer to the following graph which shows the average running speed of men and women running in running events at a range of distances. So we can see here the running speed going up to 12 meters per second. So 100 meters, we're looking up towards that 10, and then down towards a marathon, we're looking at about 6 meters per second. So we can see that steady decline. So describe the relationship between running speed, as shown in the graph above. So I've just said as the distance increases, running speed decreases. 1 mark. Describe the differences in body stature and composition between a typical elite runner in a 100-meter event and a typical elite runner in a 10,000-meter event. So just mentioning a difference from each. So I've said 100-meter, higher level of muscularity, need the explosive power to accelerate the blocks and get to top speed quickly. 10,000 meters, leaner body, less muscle mass, allow for greater muscular endurance to sustain a high-intensity aerobic effort over an extended period. The second question there, explain how the difference you described in part 1 would contribute to differences in running speeds for these two events. So I've sort of already covered that there, but would look at higher muscle mass, more explosive equals greater speed. Lower muscle mass, less weight, greater ability to hold intensity over a longer period of time. However, would not reach the same speed as a sprinter. Again, that comes down to energy systems. We cannot sustain anything above that sort of 85% of a maximum heart rate for a long time without getting fatigued. C. Glycogen sparing is a chronic training adaptation that alters the amount of muscle glycogen used as fuel for the production of ATP. Identify a running event in the graph opposite that would benefit most from glycogen sparing. So I've said one of the long distance events that would benefit from any glycogen sparing available, 1 mark. 2, name the fat that is oxidized in order to reduce the amount of muscle glycogen used. So fat can be broken down with oxygen as our second choice of fuel. So again, 1 mark. And the last one for 2 marks, athletes can hit the wall. Now I've found a definition online about hitting the wall. So generally, hitting the wall refers to depleting your stored glycogen and the feelings of fatigue negatively that typically accompany it. So we're looking at that change of primary fuel source. So glycogen, carbohydrate that's stored as a muscle liver for energy, is the easiest and most readily available fuel source to burn when exercising, so the body prefers it. But we know that. When you run low in glycogen, as your brain wants to shut down activity, it's a preservation method, which leads to negative thinking that comes along with hitting the wall. All right, here we are. So I've got the table there, which is looking at training methods. And we've got questions over here. So with reference to the table opposite, name the training method that should be used by a basketballer, according here. So leg power, I've said plyometric, 1 mark in brackets resistance, because we're looking at body resistance. What about a 1500 metre runner? Now I've said based on this, continuous, and I've referred to the constant pace part of the training session there. That matches probably the best. Even though we're looking at a 1500 metre runner as sort of a 3-minute activity, it's still got the nature of continuous training to it. Name a standardised fitness test that could be used to measure the fitness factor being developed by training methods undertaking the 1500 metre runner. So I've said, again, the multi-stage fitness test, refer to the 85% max heart rate, continually pushing that lactic threshold, so that the back end of that 1500 metre run, obviously you have the sprint finished, and that matches really well with the multi-stage fitness test. Describe 2 ways in which the 100 metre sprintage training program could be overloaded. So I've sort of looked at that frequency concept. So increase the amount of repetitions in each set from, where is it, 100 metres. So we're looking here. So amount of sets from 4 to 5. Amount of repetitions in each set from 10 to 12. There's 2 changes. If they mention rest periods, which they don't, you could change them or decrease them. Or if they mention how often the sessions, the frequency of the session ran per week, you can adapt that too. But that's fairly simple there. You just need to pull that graph off the table, that information off the table. Describe 1 difference between continuous and fartlek training methods. Again, continuous training tends to stay at one intensity over a longer period of time. Fartlek training may be over an extended period. However, it will include lots of different intensity efforts, and we know that based on what we've done in the gym. Explain 1 benefit of incorporating fartlek training methods into team training program. So fartlek training tends to replicate the intensity switches in team sports, so the different types of intensity at different periods. For example, basketball, we have different periods of high intensity, e.g. fast break, then periods of low intensity, which might be post-defense, and then free throws or breaks. Refer to the following graph, looking at the concentration of muscle glycogen. So here, explain the concentration of muscle glycogen between day 1 and day 3. We utilise lots of muscle glycogen during the exercise periods. We can see the decrease in the muscle glycogen that has not been adequately replaced after the exercise period. Hence, the athlete is starting with less stores each day. What would that do for performance? So in relation to performance, the athlete would not be able to replicate the higher intensity efforts on day 3 compared to day 1. Day 1 we had 22 grams per kilo of muscle compared to day 3, 13 grams. And so that's the data you'd need to pull off to be able to get those 2 marks. All right, I'm running out of time here, so I'll put up my answers for these 2, and you can pause them if you need to copy or review them. So looking at the change in muscle glycogen, the change is greater, and then carbohydrate loading as a diet strategy. Okay, best of luck. Please make sure you're reviewing your answers and putting in correct answers, and that as a starting point of your revision for this test.